Azure Active Directory. In this video, we will cover what is Azure Active Directory and how we can effectively use it towards our benefit as a sysadmin or a network administrator. Our identity defines who we are and what we do. Identity is at the heart of many applications and services. Identity tells the story of who uses applications and what actions the user can perform. Without identity, applications often lose the closeness or personal relationships so many users find appealing. The identity story in the Microsoft Azure platform centers on Azure Active Directory or Azure AD. Azure AD provides a cloud-friendly, secure, scalable, modern identity solution that can serve cloud-hosted and on-premises solutions alike. Before discussing what Azure Active Directory is, it can be helpful to understand what it is not. First, Azure Active Directory is not a 100% replacement for Windows Server Active Directory. For example, Azure Active Directory is set in a way that you cannot allocate objects, such as printers, to it. If you need the full capabilities of Windows Server Active Directory, you should consider installing and configuring Windows Server Active Directory on Azure virtual machines or potentially Azure Active Directory domain services. Azure Active Directory should not be considered a full replacement for Windows Server Active Directory at any point. Instead, Azure Active Directory is a complementary service provided to you by Microsoft Azure. Azure Active Directory is basically free service that comes along when you have a subscription with Microsoft. Instead of you assuming the responsibility of provisioning and configuring the multiple servers necessary for an on-premises Active Directory, Microsoft is responsible for maintaining the entirety of the Azure Active Directory infrastructure, like high availability, scalability, disaster recovery, and so on. As a consumer of the Azure Active Directory service, which is directory as a service, this is what sometimes is being referred to as, you decide what users and which of their related information should be residing in the directory, who can use that information, and what applications have access to that information. Azure Active Directory should not be considered a full replacement for Windows Server Active Directory. Remember, this complementary service of Microsoft helps you to migrate anything from your on-premises service into the Microsoft Azure services. If you already have Active Directory on-premises, the users and groups can be synchronized to your Azure Active Directory by using Azure AD Connect. Note that Azure Active Directory Connect synchronization services is the successor to Direct Sync, Azure AD Sync, and Forefront Identity Manager with the Azure AD connector. Azure AD can be associated with an on-premises Active Directory to support single sign-on. This can be either through doing true SSO using Active Directory Federation Services or ADFS to federate the on-premises identity to Azure AD or shared sign-on, in which Azure AD basically uses AD Connect to sync a password hash between Active Directory and Azure AD. Shared sign-on is simpler to configure at the cost of a small delay in synchronization of password changes. Synchronization is usually completed in a matter of few minutes. By enabling SSO with Azure AD, organizations are able to provide an easy way for employees or other users to access a wide range of software as a service applications such as Office 365, Salesforce.com, Dropbox, and more. This topic will be discussed in video in more details later down the road. Azure AD is a multi-tenant directory service. Each tenant is a dedicated instance of Azure AD that you own when you sign up for a Microsoft Cloud service like Azure, Office 365, and so on. Each tenant directory is isolated from the others in the service and designed to ensure user data is not accessible from other tenants, meaning others cannot access data in your directory unless an administrator grants explicit address to it. It is important to note that Azure AD is not just for cloud or Azure hosted solutions. Azure AD can be used by both cloud hosted in Azure or elsewhere and on-premises solution. Instead of using technologies like Kerberos or Lightweight Directory Access Protocol or LDAP to access Active Directory as you would do for on-premises, Azure AD is accessible via a modern REST API. This allows a wide range of applications on-premises, cloud, mobile, and so on to access the rich information available in the Azure AD directory. For developers, this opens up a vast opportunity that previously with on-premises solutions either wasn't possible or was difficult to achieve. By leveraging Azure Active Directory and its Graph REST API, developers are able to easily establish SSO for cloud applications and to query and write, basically create, update, or delete against the directory data. Azure AD serves as a key component for identity management in the Microsoft Cloud. Azure AD include a wide range of capabilities such as multi-factor authentication, device registration, role-based access control or RBAC, application usage monitoring, security monitoring and altering, self-service password management, and much more. All of these features are designed to help organizations provide security for cloud-based applications, including meeting required compliance targets in an effective and cost-effective manner. Let's take a look at the other possibilities and business models that Azure brings to the table. Azure Active Directory B2C or business to consumer model. Azure AD B2C is a solution for enabling consumer-facing web and mobile applications to leverage existing social accounts such as Facebook, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, LinkedIn, and others, or even custom local accounts. This is essentially the evolution of Azure AD Access Control Service or ACS. Next on the road is Azure AD Business to Business Model or AD-B2B. Azure AD B2B is a solution that allows you to enable access to your organization's applications from external business partner identities. Instead of creating guest accounts in your organization's directory for business partners, Azure AD B2B allows you and your business partners to use their own authentication credentials. This enables you to focus on your application and not identity management of external users. Azure AD Application Proxy. Application Proxy enables users to leverage SSO to securely access on-premises web applications such as SharePoint sites and Outlook Web Access without the need for building or maintaining a VPN or complicated network infrastructure. Application Proxy is available for the basic and premium editions of Azure Active Directory. Azure AD Directory Join. Directory Join enables Windows 10 services to connect with Azure AD, thus allowing users to sign into Windows using Azure Active Directory accounts. Doing so will enable SSO to Azure AD resources, access to the Enterprise Windows Store, device access restrictions using group policies, and even more. Directory Join is suitable for devices that cannot domain join. Azure AD Domain Services. Domain services provide fully managed domain services such as domain join, group policy, LDAP, Kerberos, NTLM, and so on that are compatible with Windows Server Active Directory. These features enable you to use these services without the need to build and manage Azure virtual machines or VMs. Running Windows Server Active Directory or maintain a site-to-site VPN connection between Azure and your on-premises directory infrastructure is also not needed anymore. Azure AD Device Registration. Azure AD Device Registration is an Azure AD feature that enables mobile devices such as an iOS device, which is the iPhone, Android, and Windows devices to be registered in Azure AD. The registered devices, and thus attributes of the device, can be used to enable conditional access to on-premises or Office 365 applications. Azure AD Cloud App Discovery. Cloud App Discovery enables IT departments to discover cloud applications used in their organization, thus allowing the applications to be brought under IT control to help mitigate risk of potential data leakage or other security threats. Cloud App Discovery finds the applications being used, including various usage metrics, identifies the users, and enables offline data analysis. Cloud App Discovery is a feature of Azure AD Premium. So remember, other versions of Azure AD do not provide Azure AD Cloud App Discovery. Azure AD Connect Health. Azure AD Connect Health enables you to monitor and gain insights into the overall health of the integration between your on-premises Windows Server Active Directory or Active Directory Federation Service and Azure AD or Office 365. And Azure AD Identity Protection. The Azure AD Identity Protection is a security service that enables you to gain insight into potential security vulnerabilities affecting users in your organization, more specifically, their identities. For example, identity protection can use knowledge of leaked credentials or sign-ins from geographical locations to which it would be impossible to travel, that is, time between sign-ins as less than the time needed to travel from point A to point B. Identity protection leverages Azure machine learning and heuristics to detect potential risks. Azure Active Directory is a large topic, encompassing much more than can be included in a single video or even in a book. For more detailed information, please visit azure.microsoft.com under Documentation and look for Active Directory What Is. For a deep dive into building web applications that leverage Azure Active Directory, you're encouraged to read the book Modern Authentication with Azure Active Directory for Web Applications by Vittorio Bertocci. That is a very useful book. It may be out of the scope of this video. However, I strongly recommend it to whomever is interested in understanding the Azure Active Directory in more details. There are different Active Directory editions. As of creation of this video, there are 3 tiers of Azure Active Directory. Free, which provides the ability to manage users, synchronize with on-premises Active Directory, establish SSO across Azure and Office 365, and access software as a service applications in the Azure AD application gallery. Next is Basic. Basic provides all the features of the free tier plus self-service password resets, group-based application accesses, and customizable branding. And you have to remember the other thing that comes along with the customizable branding is Azure Active Directory Application Proxy. Basic also provides a 99.9% availability service level agreement or SLA. And of course, as you can guess, the next tier is going to be Premium. Premium provides all the features of the free and basic tiers together, plus additional features as self-service group management, advanced security reports and alerts, multi-factor authentication, and licenses for Microsoft Identity Manager. For more detail on the different tiers, you can always go to azure.microsoft.com and under Documents, look for Active Directory editions. Remember, these may change at any moment as Microsoft has a tendency to update and upgrade their Azure more often. One of the trends that I have recently noticed is happening with Microsoft is they're almost neck to neck with Amazon and are trying to catch and take over Amazon in the quality and prices. And hence, we see a lot of changes happening very quickly within Microsoft services. Now let's talk about creating a directory. It is easy to create your own Azure AD directory. In fact, as mentioned earlier in this video, if you're using a Microsoft Cloud service such as Office 365, you already have an Azure Active Directory. You can associate a new Azure subscription with an existing directory used for authenticating with other Microsoft Cloud services. To do so, you need to sign into Azure Classic Portal, which is manage.windowsazure.com, using your existing work or school account like your email at ccsf.edu. This formerly was known as organizational accounts. If there are no existing Azure subscription associated with your account, the portal would return a message indicating this. Note that as of the time of creation of this video, Azure AD is not yet available in the Azure portal at portal.azure.com. As a result, all the screenshots and directions that are coming after this are basically based on the Azure Classic portal. If you don't have a subscription to Microsoft Cloud services such as Azure or Office 365, the act of signing up for the service will automatically create an Azure Active Directory. So if you don't have the subscription, you're going to see this coming up on your screen. And then when you set to go and subscribe for the new one, basically you get here. You cannot use Azure without a directory. If you signed up for Azure prior to July 7, 2013, you'll likely were automatically assigned a default directory. You can associate your subscription with a different Azure Active Directory AD by using the Azure Classic portal. You will need to proceed to the Setting extension in the left navigation area, and then from there you will select your subscription and then click Edit Directory on the bottom command bar. The resulting dialog box is this dialog box shown on the slide. This one will allow you to select a different Azure Active Directory ID to be associated with the selected Azure subscription. You can add a new Azure AD directory from the Azure Classical portal. To do so, select the New button on the command bar and then navigate to App Services, Active Directory, and finally Custom Create, as you can see in this page. So basically, you click on the settings, Active Directory, and then Custom Care is where you can start creating your new Active Directory. And the resulting page, you need to click on Add Directory dialog box, which provides a friendly page to you that you just need to answer all the questions in there. Put a name in, provide a unique domain name, and select the country of your residence or the region you want this Active Directory to be in. For the sake of this, I'm just using the default values that Microsoft always uses. It is important to understand what is the relationship between an Azure subscription and an Azure AD. One topic that can cause a lot of confusion is actually this relationship between Azure subscription and Azure AD. In the simplest of terms, an Azure subscription is a billing and in some ways a security and management entity for Azure services such as virtual machines, app services, and so on. While an Azure subscription is free, you pay only for the services used. So Azure Active Directory or Azure AD is a multi-tenant service that hosts a multitude of directories. An Azure subscription is automatically associated with a directory. In other words, a subscription belongs to a directory. So it is important to have a clear understanding of what is the relationship between these two. Now, since we will be working with the domains, and before you even ask what is a domain name, let's go there and start talking about custom domains. Notice the domain name associated with the directory basically is like directory name.onmicrosoft.com. Every Azure AD directory gets a unique name associated with the star.onmicrosoft.com. As a result, every user in the directory would have a name such as Ali at Azure Essentials.onmicrosoft.com, considering Azure Essential is our domain. You're not forced to always use the star.onmicrosoft.com domain name. Instead, you can assign a custom domain, one that you own. Once a custom domain is established, users in the directory would reference the custom domain name instead. For example, you may have Ali at ccsf.com. The process to associate a custom domain with your Azure AD directory is relatively easy. The Azure AD selection in Azure Classical Portal will walk you through all the steps in an easy-to-follow wizard. There are three main steps as you can see on the slide. They actually appeared before I get there. Get basic information about your domain or obtain a new domain if needed. It's as simple as registering a domain under your name and making sure that's a unique and available name. Then create a DNS record to prove ownership of the domain. And finally, verify the domain. First, you need to select the desired directory in the Azure AD section of the Azure Classical Portal and then click Domains in the top navigation section, as you can see over here. If you don't already have a custom domain, the portal will prompt you to create a custom domain and provide and add a custom domain link to get started. After you click the Add a Custom Domain link, a dialog box will open, as you can see here, prompting you to add the desired domain name to the list of potential domain names associated with your Azure AD directory. The next step will be to prove that you own the domain name that you just specified. Step 2 of the wizard, shown in this figure, prompts you to add a DNS setting, text or MX record, at your domain name registrar. For the purposes of this example, GoDaddy is used. However, the wizard provides a link to an article that provides detailed steps for several popular registers. So if you don't know where to find those, just click on the blue link that wizard provides for you, and basically this blue link is going to take you to proper instruction for how to bring in information from that specific registrar. For GoDaddy, proceed to the DNS Manager section when you can work with DNS records. There you will need to add a new TXT record. If that was a record type selected in the Azure Classical portal before actually, and as you can see here, provide the host, TXT value, and TTL settings that were also specified in the Azure Classical portal wizard. And then finally, as you can guess, just click Finish in the GoDaddy editor. Then be sure to save the zone file, and after adding the TXT record and saving the zone file, you can attempt to verify the domain from the Azure Classical portal wizard by clicking Verify and make sure the verification is successful. If the verification is successful, you will receive a notification as it is seen here. It could take 15 minutes for the DNS changes to take effect, and you should not be in a rush. In some cases, it might even take up to 72 hours for the DNS records to propagate. If you're unable to verify the domain after 72 hours, you should return to the domain registrar site to verify the DNS record information and see whether those are correct or not. Note that this TXT DNS record is used only to verify that you own the domain. You can safely delete it later if you like, and there is no necessity for that to actually stay there. After exiting the wizard, you should notice both the custom domain and the default or basic domain listed in the domain section as shown here. You can now change the primary domain for the directory to be the custom domain. If you want to add more custom domains, repeat the steps by first clicking the Add button in the command bar and then adding more custom verified domains, which then those will allow you to change the primary domain associated with the default star.onmicrosoft.com domain. So, it is also possible to create or be associated with, including being a member of a maximum of 20 directories. Creating multiple Azure AD directories can be helpful in development and testing scenarios in which you might not have actually access to the production subscription. When finished with one of these directories, you can easily delete the directory. Because deleting directory is a potentially significant action, a few conditions which are enforced by Azure must be met to delete a directory. Those are no users in the directory other than the global administrator, no applications in the directory, no subscriptions in the directory or associated with the directory, something like Azure, Office 365s, and so on, and finally, no multi-factor authentication providers linked to the directory. To delete the directory, just select the directory and click the delete on the bottom corner bar, and it's going to be gone. Now that we talked about how to create and delete a directory, maybe it's a good time to talk about the users and the groups. After creating the Azure AD directory, a common next step is to add users to the directory. Once users are in the directory, those users will be able to take advantage of Azure AD features such as SSO, access applications, look into the application gallery and access it, and have multi-factor authentication, which more details on this one will be coming later in this video. So, users in Azure AD can be one of the four types. They could be a user in your organization, which the user is created and managed in your directory. Could be a user with a Microsoft account like Hotmail or Outlook. This is often done as a way to collaborate on Azure resources by granting the user co-administrative rights to the Azure subscription. Or they can be a user in another Azure AD directory. This is when the user is sourced from another Azure AD directory or subscription. And they can be a user in a partner company, which this one is one of the powers of the Azure. So the user comes from a separate organization and is invited and authorized to use your directory. This is a feature of Azure AD B2B collaboration. And it is very useful because you don't need to get engaged with adding a guest account to your own directory, because all the authentication of this guest user or collaborative user is basically happening in the entity of themselves. To add new users to the directory, there are a few different approaches you can take. Users can be in the directory as a result of the directory originating from a Microsoft Cloud service such as Office 365, or users can be synchronized from an on-premises Windows Server Active Directory instance by using Azure AD Connect Sync, or users can be added programmatically via PowerShell or the Azure AD Graph API, or users can be added manually via Azure Classic Portal, or users can be added by uploading a CSV file for partner organizations, which basically brings in all the information that they have listed about those user accounts. When you first created the new Azure AD directory and you are using an Azure subscription associated with a Microsoft account, there will already be one user account in the directory. Guess who's that? It's you. You can then add users to the directory by going to the users section in the desired directory and clicking the add user button on the bottom of the command line, as you can see in this screenshot. So just come down here, click on new, and start creating your user for this specific directory. So when you click on that, so basically a new dialog box will be opened that allows you to provide details for the new user, as you can see here. If the user is in your organization, you can select the domain name suffix to that specific for that specific user, either the star.onmicrosoft.com or the custom domain if you have configured those, depending on what is the current situation of your domain name. So then you go to the next step, which is user profile. And as you can see on this slide, you will be able to provide more information about the user, such as the user's first name and last name, display name, and potentially an administrative role within the Azure AD only, not related to RBAC features in the Azure portal for that specific user. You can also enable multi-factor authentication for the user. The final step in creating a new user in your organization is to get a temporary password for the user and set him up. So when you click on the create button on this page, A temporary password will be created for the user and will be available to you. After creating the temporary password here, the password will be displayed as you can see it here. And you have the opportunity to copy it to someplace safe or email it to the user and anything. It's pretty simple actually. The process for adding a new user with an existing Microsoft account is similar to this process, with only one thing. Instead of assigning the user to a domain name associated with your organization, you will use user's Microsoft account or email address, as you can see here. After providing the user's email address, you will be able to provide the user's first name, last name, display name, role, and all that. So just like when adding a user in your organization, there is no difference. Basically, the only difference is you're adding the email address. So finally, when adding a new external user who is a user in another Azure AD directory, you will need to provide the name for the user. So as you can see here, this is done in the form of the user's email account, or in Active Directory terms, the user's user principal name, or UPN. So again, in Active Directory terms, we call this a UPN, or user principal name, which you can see can be provided here as an email address. Keep in mind that to select a user in another Azure AD directory, you will also need to be an administrator in the other directory. So if you don't have admin privileges in the other one, then you basically cannot do that. Adding external users to your directory copies the display names and usernames from the source or home directory to your directory. The users would still authenticate against their home directory, but any changes to the user's properties, such as email address changes, display name, job title, and so on, do not propagate to your directory. To determine where users in the directory are originated, look at the sourced from column in the users section, as you can see over here. So for example, let's look at Mr. Michael Coulier, which, as you can see, the email address, the username is from live.com, and it's sourced from Microsoft account. This guy, Mr. Rick Coulier, is from Microsoft Azure AD, which is another directory. Look at this format on Microsoft.com, and Coulier demo is the entity name for them, and Sunja Coulier basically comes from Microsoft Azure Active Directory of ourselves, so it stays within what we have. So pretty simple and straightforward, same thing that you have the experience of working with in the normal Microsoft Active Directory. So I think that's pretty much about the users. Let's talk about groups now. Let's see what the groups are and how we add them in Microsoft Azure AD. It is a common practice in Active Directory to organize users into groups, and groups make it easier to assign rights or grant access to a resource, or basically just manage users as a team or as a number. Instead of granting access for each individual user, access is granted to the group of which the user is a member of. And later down the road, if you need any change, you can just simply remove the user from being a member of that group instead of granularly take care of every single user. The user simply inherits the access rights of the group. You can also create and manage groups in Azure AD directory in a very easy way. Groups in Azure AD can be helpful when granting access to software as a service applications available in the Azure AD application gallery. Group section of the selected Azure AD directory allows you to create and manage all those groups that you create. So basically, if no groups exist, create a group by clicking on the Add Group button on the bottom of command bar, or the Add Group link, as you can see here. So basically, go for it, click on the Add Group, and it used to be a button, now it looks like a link here. But anyway, Click there in the add group dialog box, which is going to pop up next. You can provide name, type of security group or an Office 365 group, and description of the new group. Just put any description that you like. It may even just be the test group over here, and then click next. And over there, to add users to a group, remember, so you have to select the group name to open a new screen that allows you to manage the group, and then click the add member links to add members bottom on the bottom command bar. So very simple. Come here, select your group, click on add members, and you're going to be able to add users to those groups. The add members dialog box basically enables you to select users or other groups in the current directory to add members to the group selected. Pretty simple. When you click on the add members, you can see the list of whatever users you already have created. You select on your user, choose them, click there, add them over there, and your group is going to have its members. Pretty straightforward for people with Microsoft Active Directory experience in the past. It's just a little bit difference in the interface and how it looks like. So now we have our groups, we have our users, we added users to the groups. Let's talk about how to make it more secure, which is through Azure multi-factor authentication. So the Azure multi-factor authentication, or MFA, provides additional security for on-premises or Azure-hosted solutions. For the purpose of this video, basically only Azure-hosted solutions are discussed. Azure MFA works by injecting a second authentication challenge that user must complete successfully. Azure MFA complements, actually not completes, complements a password-based authentication challenge, which is something you know, with a challenge based on something you have, which may be a phone call, a text message, a mobile app notification. Having multiple layers of protection like this makes it harder for attackers to access the information and compromise the account of yours. So MFA comes in a few different varieties. It can come as Azure AD Free and Azure AD Basic supports MFA for Azure administrators, or can come as Azure AD Premium, which adds MFA support for users. And MFA for Azure Administrator provides security for their administrative accounts, which is the most important account within a directory, thus adding security related to creating and managing resources such as Azure Virtual Machines, Azure App Services, and so on. So MFA for users provides additional security for users signing into the applications configured to support the Azure AD. To begin using full capabilities of Azure MFA, you will first need to add multi-factor authentication provider or any MFA provider in the Azure AD. To add an MFA provider, you need to go to the Active Directory section in the Azure, and that should be the classical portal of Azure. And then from there, you need to click on the multi-factor authentication providers area. And if no providers exist, then you are presented with an option to create one, as you can see it over here. So again, you go to setting, you go to Active Directory, you go to multi-factor authentication providers, and then if there is none, simply you can create one and go from there. Note that a multi-factor authentication provider is needed if you do not have an MFA license through Azure MFA, which licenses are purchased separately from your account, so you have to buy an MFA license if you want to use multi-factor authentication. Azure AD Premium or Enterprise Mobility Suites, or EMS, basically they can also provide you with an MFA service. Azure MFA is included in the Azure AD Premium and EMS automatically. So if you buy those, you don't need to buy any MFA separately. If you have licenses available, you do not need to create a multi-factor authentication provider. So anyway, after creating a new multi-factor authentication provider, you can customize many advanced features of the service by clicking the Manage button and go over management of data-specific provider. Look at this slide where you have the MFA provider, which in this case is the demo name that I named demo. It's a certified one, and if you click on the manage over here, you basically can start seeing the management page for that. Remember, the Azure MFA is a result of Microsoft acquisition of Phone Factor in the October 2012. The Azure MFA management portal continues to reside on a phonefactor.net domain, and it's not residing on Azure domains, but still as a Microsoft um, entity right now. So, as you remember earlier when we were talking about creation of a new user, we said that you have the option to enable the MFA, selecting the user's name and then the manage multi-factor authentication button on the command bar being pressed, as you can see on this slide actually. So when you press that, you're gonna have the new window popping up, showing you a site allowing to manage the MFA setting. So whether you do it while you are adding a user or just add the MFA to user later, you're going to have the option to apply it to any users. So let's look at this one. Let's say we already have a list of users created. And as you can see, multi-factor authentication is disabled for all of these dudes. So if I click on Sunja Kulier and come here and click on enable, then I can simply enable the MFA for that user. The user will be presented with an additional security verification step. And the first time the user attempts to log in after I enable this, the user will be asked to specify the desired contact method, whether phone, text, message, mobile application, email, or whatever. And then they're going to be asked to complete the necessary steps. So basically what happens is when they log in next time, they're going to see this additional security verification popping up. And over here, they have to decide what they want to do, what is the method they want to go for. And when they do that, then they're going to receive a code, and that code comes in. They're going to add the code again, which basically for the first time, the code comes in for the verification of if they own the device that they just introduced. Let's say if they put in their phone number and they ask a text, and the text comes in, a phone call comes in with that verification code. They put the verification code, and this is going to get enabled. So let's talk about the application gallery, which is the next service that can actually benefit a lot from the SSOs. So the Azure AD application gallery provides access to more than, I believe, 2,500 popular software as a service applications such as Box, DocuSign, Salesforce, ServiceNow, Google Apps, and many more. Instead of IT administrators configuring access to each application separately and potentially managing various disparate logins, Azure Active Directory simplifies the process by enabling SSO for all of them. So Azure AD Single Sign-On is when basically Azure Single Sign-On uses the user's account information directly from Azure AD. If the user is already signed into Azure AD or Office 365, there is no need for the user to re-authenticate when accessing the third-party software as a service application. A limited number of applications in the Azure AD application gallery support federation-based SSOs. The next is password single sign-on, which uses the user's account information from the third-party software as a service application. With this approach, the user's account information and password is collected, securely stored in Azure AD, and provided to the software as a service application via a web browser extension. The majority of applications in the Azure Active Directory application gallery support this form of SSO. The browser extension is supported on Internet Explorer IE 8 through IE 11 on Windows 7 and later, and Microsoft Edge. Chrome also on Windows 7 or later is supported. Mac OS X or later is supported, and Firefox 26 or later on Windows XP Service Pack 2 or later. And if you have Mac OS X, your version should be 10.6 or later. And finally, you can do SSO through single sign-on, and use the existing single sign-on. So use an existing Active Directory Federation Services or ADFS or other third-party providers for SSO is what happens when you're using the existing single sign-on. So let's see how we can add gallery applications now. So to add gallery applications to your Azure AD directory, first select the desired directory and then the application section. So if you don't have any application in the gallery, of course you have to click on add an application to open a new dialog box, as you can see on this slide, and simply just choose if you want to add application that your organization is already developing, which means you're going to connect your development environment over here, or just basically add an application from the gallery. So if you or another member of your organization develop an application in which you would like to take advantage of Azure AD features for that, for example, SSO or ability to query the Azure AD Graph API, and so on, you're going to go with the first option. And selecting the second option will allow you to register third-party software as a service applications with your Azure AD directory, as you can see here. So when you choose the second option, you're going to be given a list of all available applications and software as a service in Azure. And there's a pretty good list of services, very useful services. As you can see, some of those services are already known to you. And anyway, after you selected the desired application or applications, which in this case we're going to just click on Box, each application will appear on the list in the Applications section, and simply just click on Add and click on the check mark. You add it, and you can remove an application basically by selecting the application and clicking on Delete. As easy as that. Just click there, click on OK and add it. Click on the application which is already added to your list, click on delete, and it's going to be gone. Very, very easy, as you can see over here. So click there, click on the add, click on the present one, and click on the delete, and it's going to be gone. So if I click on the add, it's going to take me back over here so I can add. And if I click on, after selecting any of these lines, if I click on delete, so I'm going to get rid of that application, it's going to be out of my list. So let's see what we did. We created users, we created groups, we added applications. So the natural next step is going to be assigning users to those applications. So as mentioned previously, there are different ways applications can leverage Azure AD for SSO. For example, Box provides all three options, and that's why actually we're using Box as an example over here. It provides Azure AD single sign-on, password single sign-on, and existing single sign-on. And other applications actually, like Twitter, provide only password single sign-on and existing single sign-on. So Twitter is only providing two. Depends on the application. You can always look at application properties and figure out what that specific application is actually providing. From there, in this case, as you can see, in the case of Box, we have all the three options. In case of Twitter, we only have two options. In case of Facebook, we have two options, and so on. It depends on the application, as I said. So choose that, click over there, and remember, some applications such as Box have the ability to provision, basically means create users automatically into the application once the user is assigned access in the Azure AD. So if a user is deleted from Azure AD or the user's access is revoked, this change is automatically propagated to the software as a service application. This can greatly simplify IT administration responsibilities. So even though they create their own copy of that user on their servers, as soon as you remove it from the AD, that copy is going to be gone. So basically, that copy is still going to be connected to what you have in your Azure AD. So to grant Azure AD directory users access to the selected application, you first click Assign Accounts to access a new screen, allowing you to assign or revoke access. As you can see in this screen, basically you can select the desired user, click on the assign, and assign it to any service. Or if the user is already assigned, you can click and then over here click on remove, and the assignment to that specific software as a service application is going to be gone. For applications that use password single sign-on, after assigning users, you will be presented with an option to allow users to enter and update their own credentials for that application. Or maybe you can enter them on their behalf. Pretty simple, as you always have it. So once users are assigned access to the software as service applications available in the Azure Active Directory application gallery, they can access those applications from My Apps, which basically is this guy, from My Apps for Azure Active Directory site. And they can go to the address myapps.microsoft.com and get any application that they're assigned to. So the whole idea is company is paying for these applications. The accounts are being managed by a company, so everyone who is using that account is basically using company account in one sense and being controlled by the company. Users will need to first authenticate with their Azure AD credentials, either on the custom domain name or on Microsoft.com, and then they can gain access to the site. So if the user is already signed into a Microsoft Cloud Service site, such as Azure, Office 365, and so on, then the user will automatically be signed into My Apps site. So you have to remember, it's single sign-on. Anywhere that same user is logged in, that is going to give them the ability to actually use the other places without no need to signing in again. There are two main sections of My App site. One is the applications, as you can see, and the other one is the grayed out profile. The application section provides a tile for each application to which user has been granted access. If password-based single sign-on was selected as the authentication method, if an application was added to the organization's Azure AD directory, the user might be prompted to install a browser component the first time the application is accessed. To access the desired application, users need to click the applications tile. If the password-based SSO was selected, users will be prompted to enter their credentials for that SAS application, unless the administrator who added the application did that on the user's behalf, which usually is the case. The users are then redirected to the application and signed in using the appropriate credentials. So about the Profile tab, if you go to the Profile tab, it provides some basic details about the current user, and it's an easy way for users to change their passwords and everything. And remember, these are all interconnected, so if user does that over there, basically it means it is going to be changed everywhere else if admin has not stopped it from happening. And that is pretty much all that we do with Microsoft Active Directory for the scope of this series of the videos. And thank you for watching, and thank you for learning. Your feedbacks are appreciated. Please leave me some feedback, and good luck.